Hello, welcome to the Reframing Mindset podcast, where I clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity and practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, so welcome back to Reframe Mindset podcast. My name is Colin Brooks. This episode is going to talk about, my nervousness, when playing basketball. Yeah, so let's get into it, So, I was introduced officially to basketball in high school. If you listen to how I got into basketball, it was one of those early episodes. I know that I've heard and I've seen the USA Olympics played one time. And from then, I never really introduced to basketball in high school. And if you have known about my high school introduction to it, is that you know that my first game, my first official scene, courtside, seeing a basketball game being played was seeing the team that I was on getting demolished by one dude from another school using one move, killing the whole. Yeah, just killing the whole side with the one move. I think that game ended up finishing 115 for something, because I actually left before the game ended, but I heard it was 100 plus. You see me? So back to that. To get a really good understanding, you have to understand me as a person. I'm a person in the ideal world with you know, given that, you see, this podcasting thing that I'm doing now, what I'm doing now, is not really me. This is me because right now I don't really have all the funds that I wish I had and all the things that I wish I had. So you're seeing a more extroverted side of me now through the podcast. But in reality, I'm an introverted person that likes to be by myself and like to do what I like to do, which is either maybe doing some science stuff without the pressure of passing a test or things on the line or stuff like that. I just like to do the fun stuff, either play games or watch anime or some series or something like that. I would like to do those stuff without the stress of life, passing a test and all those bullshit. That's ideal what I want. But and the reason why I wanted to be a scientist, unlike being a doctor or such like that, was that scientist is more isolated than a doctor. A doctor, you're going towards a patient, you're talking to them, interacting with them, and I'm not really a really good social person. I'm good in my domain, but outside of my domain, I'm pretty terrible. But so the scientist thing was a really good compromise. If in an ideal world, I would be alone, just doing my thing, working with chemicals and trying to solve whatever. Like in this pandemic, I would. In the ideal world, if Jamaica was more advanced and has stuff, I would be working on the vaccine, a vaccine research or whatever. But I had to just with the limited resource, I had to just use my common sense to basically carry me through it, But with that being said, I kind of get the idea that, I'm a more of a loner person and such like that. More like to do things by myself. So in primary school, I actually did sports, I played like cricket, football 1 and 2 time, and running. And that was not really out. In sports day we do like running tracks or stuff like that, but cricket and such was more like lunchtime activities or such, just play stuff. But So when I got into basketball now and I was officially recruited, and I not recruited, no, the captain that time is I usually played after school just for fun. I usually like basketball then. But when I got recruited now I actually do practicing and stuff like that. And I never really like, I never not like it. I still like the idea of playing because, I love playing sports and stuff like that. But what happened was, when we go into the game now, and this is the part where I say, getting nervous in sports and why I kind of hated basketball is that, like doing a test, like when you study for a test and such like that, and you feel like you're properly prepared. The teacher may can throw curveball or whatever, but once you kind of get the idea of what the question says, you can actually just solve the problem and then say okay, yeah. Basketball now is a pretty different thing now, and you have to get it. And know everything I said before was to make sense. So basketball is not an individual sport; it's a team sport with different people with different personalities coming together to try win a game, And on any given day, you can't really tell if those people are in the game mode or not. I'm more like for it. I wasn't. I was one of those late addition to the team, so my thing was, I'm coming. I was, they called me to be on the team, so I was like, yeah, okay. But I was coming and try to do my best. I know one of the best is good enough. But the rest of the team seem like, those superstar like thing, like, you can never really tell it's like they want to win, but they have this kind of superstar thing like that. And that wasn't me. I was a person that come in like, yo, come in, do the job, do the best I can. So that was me and the team, and I was the odd one out. And plus, if you remember it during high school, I was doing science. I was pretty a nerd or stuff like that. So, I was the odd one out in many cases. And then over time, I kind of fit in. But I was still the odd one out. So that was the first thing. The next thing is back to what I was saying with the test. Basketball, playing a sport, I should say, there's a lot of randomness in sports. That's, so you can be in the practice, practicing how to dribble or score or all these things. But when you're in the game now, the pressure is on, and every miss is that you're actually down trying to win a game, And when you lose, actually, this is it's real stakes, We want to win, get the medal and stuff like that. So every time you lose, it's one time further away from the medal. So, and this is me, new coming. So I never joined the basketball team until around grade 9 or such, But they win, the team was there. I know of the team and people on the team from I was in grade 7. Because, grade 7 was the first time I tried to actually join the team. And you remember what happened with the one dude. So, me joining in grade 9 and such like that, it was just me trying to not mess up the whole vibe, So, but when I was in the game now, I was trying to do the best I can do, but every time I get the ball, the worst thing I wanted to do was shoot, because the nervousness, as I said, the nervousness in the game where it's not the point of shooting and missing now. It's that the nervousness make you miss some very easy shot. Like you can be under the rim and you just put the ball up with too much pressure and it goes over it. I was like, it's all those things, and then, funny throughout my whole career, my basketball career, funny enough, I was always put in some clutch situation, or that's what they call it, but some very win or lose situation where if I miss, and I usually make those, because throughout my career, majority of my points before my last year, majority of my fights usually come in the clutch. Maybe like the last point or something like that. But over time, I get better with the shooting, even though this nervousness was still there. I get better with the shooting, and I usually make some very, very unlikely shots that get the team to the proper victory. But other from those shots, it was nervousness every time I touch the ball, man. Like every time I dribble, I usually get a travel because I'm left-handed, and every time I dribble, before the ball touches the ground, I usually move one of my foot before because in my head I'm thinking very very fast about what I want to do. So my foot always move before the ball could touch the ground. So I always get travel. So that was one of the things that I never like do. I never like the dribble. So I either hold the ball and try to pass to someone else. If I have to actually, if they block everybody else who they can pass, I have to basically, it was a 50-50 chance where majority of the time, every time I bounce the ball, travel. So it was a mess. It was a mess. But it was a good experience coming out of and that was one of the things, if you remember, kind of build up my status where I'm known, the whole basketball thing. And it was like, is one of those things that me realize I don't really like the idea of fame. I like money, I like I would like lots and lots of money. But the fame, popularity and stuff like that, that's not me. I'm a science person. And I would just like lots and lots of money to just do what I like to do. And everybody can just go with the fame. But the thing about it now, in modern time, you have to be kind of fame. The money only comes with fame majority of the time. It doesn't really come unlike that because everybody is an attention person now. So yeah, but that was it in regards to my story about playing basketball. It was always a nerve-wracking experience, and I think the next thing about it is I started out as a bench player. So and then eventually I became a starter. So sometime on the bench when I just started, it usually be frightening sometimes when I get game, because when I just started I was just nobody. And then eventually I said, "Oh, Colin, get in the game." I was like, "Shit, I'm actually going to go in the game." So yeah, man, it was yeah, those basketball days was something. It was something. But I'm glad I got some accolade and accomplishment from those. It was some good days. But to me, I like the sport. But to me, maybe in a different, maybe I would have to change my mindset to actually play the game again. I'll actually maybe go and shoot some ball, but actually go in and play, like real games and such. It would I would have to actually see if I would actually want to do it or not. So that's it for this episode. Yeah, man. And look forward for the next episode.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.
It's a really special one for me because, it kind of just came to me that, this podcast has really became one of my childhood dream that came true, in a weird way. I have to wonder how that came about. So if well, if you know me, well, you would know me. But back in primary school and such like that, I was pretty young, and so people were older than me and such like that. So, I was pretty, things that people would talk about wouldn't really even make sense to me at those times, with us doing my own thing and such like that. But, over time, and as I getting bigger grades,